With agenesis of the corpus callosum. Her name is Gracie, and she's 11 years old, and many of the qualities of that actually do present themselves in a manner similar to autism. She has epilepsy and some motor functioning disorders and that type of thing. But Jessica and I have become friends. As I didn't really have a people to go to, so to speak, or a group that was around ACC other than a national group. So we got together a couple of years ago, and we ended up doing some some programs on a volunteer basis. One of them being called AIM, Advocacy and Inclusion on a Mission. It's a disability education program that we have launched in the elementary schools. We've done it for 2 years. We're going on our third now. We did 4 schools the first year, 6 schools the next year, and we're hoping to do 14 this year, and that'll be not only in Fayette County but in other areas. So it's really grown, and we've introduced a lot of critical thinking. We're going to do a fun project called Mission Inclusion this time, where the kids will get to investigate their own schools and neighboring parks and areas out in the community, and kind of figure out how accessible and inclusive they are. And then the second part of that would be that they will actually advocate and write letters to hopefully legislators and school officials and other people that can help affect change around that. So that's just one of the programs that we have. The reason we wanted to come tonight, we do have a 3-pronged approach to educate, engage, and employ. And so we'll pass these around, but under engagement, that's partially family engagement. So we found a program called Volunteer Advocacy Project that was created at the Kennedy Center down in Nashville by a sibling. And it teaches people very intensive IEP training, so it's like a 36 to 40-hour program. Don't hate me, but it's on Saturday mornings in the fall. But I did it before, the football games start, so you can still tailgate. But what it's going to do, we've got kind of a mini syllabus over here, but if you look through, it gets really in-depth into, 504 or into eligibility, evaluation, all of the stuff that, we walk in as parents and are kind of outnumbered with the amount of people on the other side of the room, and we want to become more empowered, more educated. And then the cool thing is, it's only $99. We have scholarships available. We've teamed with HDI to do it, and they funded the project through the Fund for Excellence. So we've got lots of great speakers coming in from all over the state. But the cool thing is that when you sign up, you are obligating to help 4 families in need. So we will be kind of being the facilitator or family matching service for that. And so like if you called me and said, somebody in our group that needs help, and then we'd get a little more information and try to match them with an advocate that we feel would be good. And it doesn't necessarily even mean that advocate goes into the IEP meeting. It might be just that they're asking advice beforehand or something like that. And if like Protection and Advocacy, they're really interested in helping us with this, but they don't have lawyers or advocates to go into every IEP meeting that they get calls for, and that's not even necessarily what's needed. So they're really excited about the project. Yes?
Can I ask a question? So if you already have families that you represent already, can you use those families as your 4 families?
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, we just want that commitment, because this is the pilot class, right? So we'll be asking you questions about, like pre-survey and then post-survey, and that really what we're looking for is outcome, right? That's what it's going to be all about.
Can the families in need be any county in the state?
Any county in the state.
Oh boy, can I feel like that.
And also, I do want to say this, because, you're a PhD, Myra, Beth, and I know that, and, there's another, I think, Dr. Forsyth in the room, and you do not have to be just a parent. You could be, when we went down to Nashville, and we went down and sat through 3 hours, and within that 3 hours, I think I've used that information I learned there more than anything over the past, 8 months to help people, including my own child. But you can be, there was a retired principal there. There was a current special ed teacher that just wanted to know more about the system because he didn't feel like the students were getting everything that they were supposed to get. So it does not have to be a parent. It could be a sibling. It could be somebody that's just interested in being involved. It could be a civic advocate or industry professional, anything like that. And then now that you guys have been mentioning you have some adult children in the room. I do want to let you know that our board, after a year and a half of begging, our board approved us to do supported employment. So we've got our application going in with Office of Vocational Rehab. And by September, hopefully, we'll be approved to do that. And our target market really in that is youth in transition. So all of our programs are created to follow the person from preschool and transition into elementary all the way through transition into adulthood. Because that's where we felt like the gaps were. Being in the school system. And Jessica and I both have, 5th graders, same age, same size. He doesn't talk hardly at all. My daughter talks all the time. We think they're the perfect match.
So you already arranged their marriage.
Yeah. So if that's not enough, I just wanted to tell you too that this is a fundraiser that we are having, but it's a fun fundraiser where you're going to get lots of food and an open bar and all that good stuff. So if you want to take one of these, we'll leave it up here. It's called Kentucky Epicure. It's going to be at Kitchen Concepts, and so they're going to be 4 chefs and they're live cooking there, and it's a 2.5-hour open bar with live music as well, and a silent auctions, including a condo in Hilton Head, which we could all use. Like one person can get it, we'll just all go. Okay?
That's the plan, right?
So, do y'all have any questions?
How much is the fundraiser?
It's $100 a couple or $60 an individual, and we are not checking marriage licenses as you come in. So if you want to hook up with somebody and say you're a couple, that's fine. We don't care. So you can say we just want to encourage more people to come as much as possible. But it will be honestly from 7 to 9:30. There's somebody from Weta Michaels family of restaurants at Smithtown, Jonathan Sanning. He's going to be there. There's going to be Beth Hensley from Sweet Lilu's. We've got DeRay from DeRay and Friends Catering, and then we have Kate Horning, who's she's a healthy chef, and she has a cookbook, and she's like the on-site kitchen concept chef. But if you haven't even been to Kitchen Concepts, that alone is really neat. And then last but not least, okay, I'm sorry, I'm helping you out here. So this is what we think, okay? We think, together we can do so much more than all these people doing things in our separate silos. And because, like I said in the beginning, that I didn't have a group, we not just because of that, but we realized that, everybody's doing great work, but there should be some of that work that we're doing together, because things like really changing policy or really building capacity in Kentucky, really advocating for legislative change, that has to come from all of us. So that's why with our disability education program, we have asked some community partners to come on board. And the first place we've started, which just naturally makes sense, is at parent advocacy groups. So we've already had Spina Bifida Association of Kentucky, Down Syndrome of Central Kentucky, Tash, Kentucky, and Easter Seals Cardinal Hill have come on board as community partners. And there's different levels, varying levels that you can join in at. But what it allows you to do is bring your curriculum in. We'll help you develop it, and then you'll be in. We've got that distribution cycle and the process already set up to get into the schools and be able to be there, and it's really effective. If you're not a community partner, we still want you to volunteer and be a part of it, but this helps you formalize that relationship and to really say, we're in this commitment for Kentucky to become more inclusive and more accessible. So then when we go to KDE in a year, mark my words, say we want more, we want inclusion training, professional development for teachers. If we're doing that as several groups coming in as one, then they're more likely to listen to us than if we're just going in as autism group or Down syndrome group or our group. So just consider that, and if you know other organizations, we do have some for-profit businesses that are coming on board and that type of thing too. So it's been really effective and really fun. So I just left a few because that's not going to be appropriate for everyone. So we're going to leave you little bag tags here that say advocacy and inclusion on a mission, and I'll leave you some business cards here if you have any questions at all. I didn't let her speak once, did I?
That's okay.
It's my thing. She's got my back though,
Yes.
always.
Yes, I do. I don't really have much more to say. I think you covered it, to be honest.
See, that's typical with Jacob and Gracie.
That's right.
They
Maybe they're just our
they come by
personalities.
it all.
Like parent, like child.
Right, yes. just
My
our
kiddo's got one of
personalities.
those tags on his backpack.
Does
Yeah.
he still?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we were giving these out at the at AIM. This year, what we're going to do is we're going to have some people that are good at making murals and doing person-centered planning. We're going to have like a huge wall that we fill up with that poster board paper, and we're going to let each grade come in and tell us what inclusion means to them, and have them draw it out and leave that as the gift that we leave for the schools, and then hopefully the art project will make a frame around that. So if you haven't participated in AIM, October we have 3 events back to back to back, and in November we have another one. And last but not least, participants, we're talking about AIM Day.
Sure. So we're having AIM, Mayor Gray, 3 years ago, declared October 22nd as AIM Day in Lexington. And so this year we're going to celebrate that with a vendor fair. We're going to host that at Stonewall Elementary. The following week, this is on a Saturday, but the following week is their AIM Week, so this is kind of the kickoff for them to have AIM Week. So we'll have vendors, we're going to try to have some fun activities for kids, bounce houses, face painting, all those fun things, and just try to bring in, families of all different, needs and different types of disabilities, and just get them information that they need. So
Do you have a Facebook site?
we have actually a website that's probably our best option, which is buildinclusion.org. Yeah, and our AIM is a part of our main company, which is Build Inclusion, and we are a nonprofit, 501c3 nonprofit. So,
Can I make a suggestion?
yes, ma'am. Sorry.
The 4 Paws for Ability
Yes.
service dogs at
I got
UK.
their information
Totally
yesterday.
invite them.
Yeah.
They were sitting
Everybody
next
will love
to
the
us
Really
dogs.
smart.
yesterday.
They really, the kids love.
Yeah.
No, they went to Stonewall. She came up.
No, they were
Oh,
really
yeah.
smart.
You
I
brought
came,
them in at
I
really
came and
smart.
talked
Yeah.
about
Yeah,
service
they
dogs
came
and
to
autism.
Stonewall,
And they
too,
came to
so.
Stonewall the next week.
I
But
did,
yesterday
I
you walked,
did
they were
one of
sitting
them,
right
but I
next to
They
couldn't
were
do
right
the
beside
other
us.
one, I
Yeah,
think.
so.
Yeah, because I've never been to Stonewall. So I
Thanks.
did Julius Marks, and then I sent the presentation over to
Right.
Stonewall.
Did anybody want one of these?
And sent dogs.
Yes. Todd needs to bring it to us here. Okay, so thank you all so much for letting us take time up in your meeting.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you so
Thanks for what you're
much.
doing.
Hanging out.
All right.
Well, Myra, I think we are ready for you, if you are ready.
Okay, so I really do.
Yeah.
Does anybody really watch these?
Yeah?
We actually get people
Okay.
from around the country watching them,
Okay.
actually.
So I'll say to those people, again, this is more of a conceptual talk about autism, not a lot of practical advice, but hopefully some good things to think about. I don't know why this isn't reading it to us. Luckily, we can read it, Metamorphosis. There's our parrot, just thinking about Metamorphosis. I really like this picture. So we might say, well, Metamorphosis, how does that apply to autism? You guys could all answer that. Metamorphosis and frequency, right? Maybe? Now, I've got some CDC numbers for you to look at too, but I thought I would pull something out of local information so you can see the numbers of students with autism as their eligibility label served in Fayette County Public Schools 2010 to 2011, and then 2014 to 2015, so you can see the change in eligibility label there. Then here, this is the CDC, what's the name of this, y'all? It's the CDC's Autism and Developmental Disabilities Monitoring Network. So you can look at 2000, 6 sites reporting 6.7 for 1,000, 1 in 150, 2010, with 11 sites reporting 1 in 68. And is CDC still at 1 in 68 now? What is it now? 1 in 51, okay, so I need to update that. It's always changing. So anyway, this is just sort of showing you how our numbers, our frequency numbers, are having a metamorphosis. But I've got some interesting things that I want you to see before you totally make up your mind about what that is. So why are we seeing these increasing numbers? And there are debates. Could it be a true increased incidence? There really are more people with autism in the world than there used to be, and all kinds of interesting stuff about that. Simon Baron-Cohen is a British psychologist, and he says, he's got this book that I'll show you the cover of it later on. Baron-Cohen says that as .com rises and technical skills become more valued in society, the people with technical skills and people with technical type brains can find partners more easily than they could have long ago, that they can reproduce more easily, create families. And so he thinks that the tech boom is causing more technologically minded people to marry and produce more folks on the autism spectrum. I thought that was interesting. So if you believe that, then that would be a true increased incidence kind of theory. And some other people think that there may be an increased incidence, and it might be environmental changes, more pollution, more surfactant, stuff in the air, and there may be some genetic predisposition that gets triggered by some of these environmental changes. So those are just a couple of the ideas. Now, diagnostic pattern changes. I know this is going on just because I've been diagnosing autism now for, I don't know, probably 30 years or a little less than 30 years. So there definitely have been diagnostic pattern changes. Our book that we use to outline what characteristics have to be there has changed. The numbers of diagnoses on the spectrum have, gotten big and now more recently been cut down. I think in an effort to kind of quell some of the changes that diagnostic patterns may be causing to happen. And I particularly wanted you guys to see this Swedish child and adolescent twin study. And now let's see if I can interpret it for you correctly. What I believe this is that these lines are the lines when they call people and say, does your child have an autism diagnosis or not? And the person says yes or no. So you can see those lines coming up. But the blue line is when they call and ask diagnostic questions. And then the caller decides whether the person has autism or not based on that. I mean, that is interesting, isn't it? And their blue line has stayed about the same. It was higher than the diagnosed individuals, and now it's coming in much closer to the right. So to me, this was kind of the study that made me think, it really shows you diagnostically how what we just, and that's sort of what this whole talk is about, is how what we decide to call abnormal or autistic or whatever we're labeling it, how it really changes things. So maybe we're having a metamorphosis not in frequency, but a metamorphosis in diagnosis or labeling, or what we're willing to consider. It's like we've got this human behavior to look at, who has something called autism versus who's just a little weird, or a little different. Where is that line drawn? And I think that we've grown the diagnosis. I know we've grown the diagnosis. For good or for bad, we have. I don't know why my sound isn't working. I'm not too worried about it.
That's actually
Oh, maybe
making
it
noise.
is, but it's just real tiny.
Yeah, it's making noise.
This is my typing, and we may get bored with this and not want to see it all. I thought this was really cute until I had to sit and watch it. So what I'm doing is showing you all the things. So this is 1943 when Kanner came up with autism. He was an Austrian-born MD. Hans Asperger was also in Austria. And he stayed in Austria. He came up with Asperger's syndrome in 1944. This, I guess, is probably let's see what the next one is. I think this is when I entered the fray. Yeah. So after I learned the first term, infantile autism, and now autistic disorder, that's where I did all my training under this book. Because these things that are coming up now are coming out of the DSM-5. It's the term of the particular year that the book came out. I remember I was at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, when all this stuff came out. In 1994, this was a turning point in really broadening the diagnosis because we got all these extra terms. First it was just autism, and then just autism. Then we got PDD, anybody remember PDD or PDD-NOS? I thought that was kind of handy, but it's gone now. That was there. Asperger's syndrome came in 1994. So that really spurred a lot of self-advocacy movements, and there are still people, even though Asperger's syndrome in 2013 isn't recognized anymore, there's still people using that term to describe themselves and to advocate for themselves. So that's just a little bit of the diagnostic changes. Let's see. So what is autism? Most of you know quite a bit about it from personal experience. But we're sort of, the DSM now divides it into two categories, the intense special interest and the social communication differences. It used to be a triad of three differences, now it's kind of this two. But I like to look at it, see you've got the black dot in the middle, maybe this was our original folks who got diagnosed. Then we moved, now we're in the green dot period, and then we've still got all of the rest of us weirdos, out there somewhere on the spectrum. It's just a question of whether we get diagnosed or not. Do we need to be? Do we want to be? We could go into that. So why do we even care about metamorphosis? There are clinical impacts in terms of what services are available, who's going to pay for them, and what people can get, and kind of determining who needs the most, and that is, fairly intense. Personal impacts in terms of whether you get a diagnosis or not, or whether your family member gets a diagnosis. I've told Melanie, I just came from an IEP meeting, or an ARC meeting, where the parent was really angry, the caregiver was really angry because I didn't diagnose the child with autism. So it's like, it's come full circle. It used to be that nobody wanted the diagnosis, and now sometimes people get mad at me when they don't get the diagnosis. So it's kind of interesting times. It's certainly a very popular, high-profile thing to think about these days. And I think that's mostly been cool. I like that part of it. But there are philosophical aspects to this too, because who decides what is a disability? Who decides that? Is it the person themselves? Is it their family? Is it some book? I mean, it's definitely some book, I think, because I have one in my car, I have one on my iPad, I have one on my office desk, I use it all the time. And sometimes I use it in a way that decides whether somebody can get a service that they need or not. So I lose a lot of sleep to this stupid thing. I wake up in the middle of the night, what should it be? But this is all my guideline. Well, this or the ICD, because that's what tells us as professionals whether we're allowed to make a particular diagnosis or not, really. And then how about insurance? Is that, interact with diagnoses? Huge. Insurance and just payment sources, huge. In fact, for my private practice, most of what I do is assess people and then determine what diagnostic category they fit into, with the aim of getting service, the adults, with getting services for the adults. I don't know if you guys has anybody ever read Waist High in the World? It's getting to be an older book now. If you're interested in the philosophy of disability and you just love sort of perspective of an irreverent feminist, you should really read this book. I love it. I read it years ago and I've never forgotten it. I've never forgot the character. Nancy Mayers has a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. I believe she's still living. And she was kind of the first person to introduce me to this whole idea of can somebody figure out what they want to call themselves. And here's a quote from her. And she's just a winchy person. It's one of my idiosyncrasies. I prefer to call myself a cripple. I prefer to call myself a cripple. And sort of how do you like that? People that are trying to skirt around and be politically correct. And a lot of people on the autism spectrum don't want to be called person with autism. They want to be called autistic. Or I'm an autistic. They kind of have their own ideas for what they want to call themselves. I try to go with that whenever I can. Anybody remember this guy? Used to work in Lexington years ago. He's the one that founded Latitude years ago. I think he sold it or passed it on. Latitude lives on. But this is Bruce Burris. I love him. Crazy artist guy. And now he lives in, I think he lives in Oregon now. Anyway, when I first met him, these are sort of all my influences in making me think about this stuff philosophically. When I first met him, I would come in with my clients and he would do art stuff with them. And he would always say, he's a person considered to have a disability. The artist that did this is considered to have a disability. And I would always think, Bruce, what are you talking about? Weird. And the older I get and the more I do work, it's like the more I think, he was right. I really get what he was saying. In other words, I don't know what this person said. Sometimes his people wouldn't talk. So it's like, I don't know what he thinks. But other people consider him to have a disability. It's like, I've come around to Bruce's point of view. You got to think about what's the impact of being considered to have a disability on you emotionally, financially, quality of life wise. I mean, I think it can be pretty big, one way or the other. if it gets you services, it could improve your quality of life. If it makes you feel left out or lousy about yourself, it could be really difficult. If it helps you understand yourself, it could be helpful. I mean, I don't really know the answer, but I think it's probably a pretty huge impact one way or the other. There we go. Emotional consequences. Sometimes I get ahead of myself. So this is kind of what we've been saying. If behavior is on a line, on a spectrum, where's the line and who draws it? And then I always say, this is my what if. What if the spectrum gets so big that we're all on it? I mean, I think it is that big. And what if we're all, do you know what BAP stands for? This is just a Japanese band called BAP. But in psychology, BAP is broader autism phenotype. So for example, I might work with one of my students and I say, oh yeah, his dad's coming in, he's kind of BAP, you'll like it. And then they know, okay, so this is like an engineer or, whatever type. Or we'll say, I'm having a BAP moment. Wait a minute, let me get myself fixed up. So broader autism phenotype is just the whole thing. And there's actually a test. You can take a test. You did, right?
I did.
You can take a test and see if you're BAP.
I did, and
it's
I
kind of
was.
fun. Yeah, I think I was too, right? Probably.
I don't remember.
I would assume that I
Yeah.
was. So, I don't know. Have you guys seen this talk that Bev and I did, this little video?
Interviewing Dr. Myra Beth Bundy about her experience as a
Let's see if you get it.
person in society. Thank you, Dr. Bundy, for agreeing to appear on this show so that our viewers can gain a better understanding of what it's like to not have autism in the world we live in today.
You're welcome.
To begin with, about how old were you when you realized that you were normal?
I think I was in my mid-20s, probably about 25. So it took a while, a long while.
Was it very upsetting for you?
No, it was actually kind of a relief.
Relief, actually. Well, tell me, what is it like to be not autistic when, to be surrounded by others who, have special interests and communication differences and to just be the way you are?
Well, sometimes I could feel a little left out. I mean, they do have some nice devices and the special interests are great. I'm just me. I get by all right. I get a little jealous about treat time, for sure.
Does it cause a lot of problems in your life?
I don't think so. It's hard for me to tell. I'm just me.
For example, do you find that social stimuli can distract you when you need to be obsessing on something on your own?
Sometimes, I do worry about what people think and think about what people think. It's true.
I've noticed that.
Okay, so it's long, but you get the deal, right? The idea is, whose perspective is whose and what's normal and, I don't know if any of you guys have seen this article. It's getting old now. I hope I can continue to use it because it's getting out of date, but it's an article called Autistic and Proud. If you're interested, you can find it online, get the whole thing. Basically, I just like the phrase autistic and proud, and the whole point is people talking about what their life is like, and families talking about how they feel about their child, and just basically, I want to show you this. I made my students read this, and these are undergrads who were not in an autism class. I think it was a child psychology class, and they came up with so many good writings that I wanted you to read some of them. So Trivedi said, if more focus was placed on giving children tools to cope with the neurotypical world rather than trying to change them, that would benefit autistics a lot. I like that. And then this undergrad said, as humans, when we notice something is different in a person, our first instinct is to change them. But change doesn't always mean a good thing. I think it's wrong to try and coach anyone with autism to change their behaviors just to fit in. I think it's a very controversial topic, considering there's no true or real definition of what constitutes fitting in. Trying to manipulate or change someone's life puts them in an awkward position, can have negative effects. We think we're helping them by coaching them into these actions, but we may be causing a completely new problem for them, such as self-esteem issues and depression. I thought it was very insightful. So this is an 18-year-old student without an autism background. It's like, yeah, this, we do have really the brighter cognitively the person with autism overall, And the more insight they have, the more at risk they are for some of these associated things, like being anxious and depressed. I think just because they can see, oh, I'm trying to get there to fit in or do these things, and it's very difficult for me. I just have these things up here just because this is some of the employers that work with GRASP that seek out workers on the autism spectrum. And if you know a lot of people on the autism spectrum, it's a very smart move because there are so many good qualities about people with autism that could make them fantastic workers. What are some of them? Yeah, hyper focus. I mean, obviously you don't want them working in an area that's outside their beam of focus, but if you get them working, if you cause work to get in their beam, or their beam matches their work well, or you tell them you're going to do these 3 things before, you take a break, well, I mean, they work better than anybody else. They can be super focused workers. And they may enjoy some repetitive type jobs and really take a sense of pride when other people wouldn't like to do that, because in autism, lack of structure is work, and structure and repetition can be play or enjoyment. So, it's just sort of an idea of matching skills to workers and finding out that these people could really have something to offer that we'd be missing out on hugely if we didn't have them around. So here's Simon Baron-Cohen again. I think this is the book. It has, it's called 0 Degrees of Empathy, and it talks about all kinds of different disorders that have no empathy. It's like, they talk about psychopathy, borderline personality disorder, what else? There's one more. But most of them he sees as 0 degrees negative. The person lacks the ability to take somebody else's perspective, but it's a negative thing for society. And what I thought was cool about this book is he sees autism as a condition in which people may not be able to perspective take, but he thinks it could be a positive. Because he says that people who perspective take are sort of empathic thinkers, sort of personal, social thinkers, that people with autism could be systematizers, systematic thinkers, and he thinks that having systematic thought can bring all kinds of positive benefits from the world to the world. And I think about, Temple Grandin always talks about how she does what she does, and it's, surely he has read her stuff and thought about it, because she imagines what animals will do and changes her little designs for her animal systems. I mean, she really is using her systematic thought. She doesn't say, what would the employer think, or none of that stuff. She focuses on her work. So this might be a book that you would like. It gets into a lot of biological aspects of autism, which could be interesting. And Baron-Cohen just kind of recognizes autism as this special human, special human condition, special place on the human condition as a whole. I love that idea. And Bev, who you saw in the video, the last video, she is always a big advocate of maybe autistic people do perspective take and express sympathy, but maybe it's just not in the way that neurotypical people do it, so we don't know that it's happening. And I always want to try to recognize that. She's got this great, does anybody ever look at any of her blogs? Square 8 blog? She has this great video that she did. I think what happens is somebody comes into work and says their cat died. And what do neurotypical people do? He says his cat died. What do we say?
I'm so sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry. It's so hard to lose an animal. That kind of stuff. So that happened. And then Beth, as the autistic person, didn't say anything and left. And then I can't remember what she does later. Something very touching. Brings him back a picture of his cat or a rose, and comes back in and sneaks and puts it on his desk. And when everybody watches that, it was like, that's true, So we thought she left the room. She doesn't care. She doesn't know how he was impacted. But actually, she was like, I'm overwhelmed by this emotion. I'll do a little something for you later. But I do care. So what are some things we as humans can do to be more inclusive? Perfect, given your guys' inclusion stuff. To allow people on the spectrum to participate in our world more easily. I have some thoughts, but what do you guys think? I figure you have some ideas. What do you think what can all of us do to allow people with autism to be easier in the world?
I think we should teach our kids to be accepting of the other kids with autism. For example, my son, he loves to play with one set of his cousins because they see him all the time. They understand that he's a little different, and that means that he has sensory needs, and they understand his sensory needs. And yesterday at his birthday party, when I explained to the kids that yes, they could jump on his trampoline, but if he needed to jump on his trampoline,
Everybody.
then they needed to let him do that so that he could regulate, because there were so many people in our apartment. And they were all like, at first they were like, why? And I explained it to them, and they were like, okay, sure. And anytime Thatcher needed to jump, they let him on the trampoline, and then the other kids just jumped when that was done. And they were totally cool with that.
So education early on.
Early education
Yeah.
is definitely something that can be done.
And I think that's how you spark the change in society's thinking
Mm-hmm.
with all
Start early.
disabilities is to start early. And I think that what you talked about earlier is that we try to change the person and not society. And I think that as society we need to change to allow inclusion, you know, instead of
Yeah.
just trying to change that person to fit what we think is normal.
And answer kids' questions. If they ask why Thatcher is not talking, explain to them why.
Yeah, I think so too. I think communication is a big thing. If we keep
Yeah.
things a secret, like, dude, he has a disability,
Right.
then everybody thinks that's something I can't ask about. It's something bad.
And it's something bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all of a sudden
It's
it's
a
something
secret.
bad.
What do you think?
I think for me, my thing with Ben is to put him with, you know, all different situations and let him experience, you know, I put him on a basketball league. He's the only autistic child on that basketball league. And all the kids, you know, they knew immediately that he couldn't do the motor planning and all the things that they could do. But he, you know, eventually, the coach, I think it's important that you put them with people who could, you know, the coach was so exceptional, and
supportive.
he picked something that Ben was really great at, like his running. And so he had the other kids look up to Ben for the running, even though he really lacked the basketball skills. He couldn't dribble, he couldn't do layup. and all
So,
the
no,
things.
so what I'm getting is notice strengths,
Mhm.
capitalize on them, use them.
Right.
Don't let a person go to waste.
Right.
You know, don't let their light go to waste just
Right.
because they have some other things that are different. And I see definitely growth in this. You know, it's not perfect, but I certainly see growth over the course of my career so far, you know, in this. I think we still have a long way to go. My son walks with crutches, and it's amazing the barrier, you know, just to show you the barriers that are there. Just having crutches, I think, people are kind of like, so I'm always probably embarrassing him by saying, yeah, he uses crutches, but he's cool. Try him out. Yeah, he looks kind of weird, but just talk to him a little bit. Even though he has the crutches, he's really a cool guy. He can play video games, and occasionally a kid will be like, okay, I'll try it. So sometimes it's getting past that, whatever, you know, it's different, or why doesn't Thatcher talk? Can I still be his friend? You know, is he still
I always
a good
answer
kid?
that question when kids ask. They'll ask, and I'll say, it's because he has autism. It means he's a little different. It doesn't mean he doesn't like you. He does like you. He just doesn't talk very much. And if he doesn't say I like you too, that's okay. He doesn't tell his mommy and daddy that either.
Figure it out. Figure out a way to interact. Let's see what I said. Oh, I just said, you know, listen to self-advocates. If we have people who are able to tell us what their experience was, we need to listen to them if we can. It's not always easy because we're we're neurotypical. I'll catch myself at that sometimes. We have to make sure, you know, at our autism walks, and you guys made an effort in that way, to have people with autism at the autism walk. Let them have their voice heard, and they get to have a booth too, you know, an exhibition booth. Make sure and invite that. And sometimes because of processing speeds, we can run over people that are trying to advocate, and we have to make ourselves wait. This guy cracks me up. Do you know him? Yeah, you know, the idea is that he can give you some experiences to help you understand what somebody might be going through. I thought that was hilarious. He is just a really funny guy. Super energetic. So yeah, we can go into the autism
he on
simulator.
YouTube?
Yeah, he's on YouTube.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look that up.
Totally on YouTube. And then what if we explore what is meaningful to people on the spectrum rather than only exploring whether their symptoms go away, you know, or whatever. And the way I try to do it, of course my little research projects are very small, so it's too bad I'm not, you know, a big time researcher doing this, but maybe we need to think about, interacting with and interfacing with big-time researchers and saying, well, did you think about the perspective of the person with autism? When I did my driving group, I didn't just see how their driving skills were. I said, did you have fun? Did you like getting in the car? Did you like steering it? What would you do differently next time? It's funny, I saw Vol yesterday. And I said, Vol, you're going to come to my group? And he said, is it driving? So I don't know if he was thinking yay or no, never yet. So,
I want you to bring it back.
yeah, come back
driving.
again.
Hagen wants you to bring it back.
So I try to add, I just think when I do my little research projects, I will never do one without asking the person what they thought about it. What did you think about it? Did you think this was good or not? Qualitatively, and I usually analyze their stuff and I try to present what they did. Sometimes I only present what they said instead of what somebody else said.
What was interesting about, and going back to the comment that your undergrad student said, was we tend to place limitations in the sense that we determine the limitations for the person on the spectrum.
We're glad you're enjoying that, Sarah.
As against modifications. Should we modify our behavior rather than asking
Yeah.
them to change their behavior?
I know, or is there a compromise? I mean, it's just, I think it must be hard for families. You guys have to make those decisions all the time, right? Should we keep requiring him to do this? Or and you're a good example because you don't compromise that much. You really expect a lot out of all. And I learned so much from how all kinds of different families do it. And in my mind, those will be my examples. I'll be like, but Hazel took away Disney from Bob. And it kind of works. He kind of quit thinking about it after a while, So I have all these, if there's any skill that I have, it's remembering all the things that I've noticed people doing all through the years and then thinking about what worked and what didn't. And every family has their own style. Some may want to be more accommodating. Sometimes even people are too accommodating, Sometimes I'll get families and it's like, your kid is beating the heck out of everybody. That's not just autism, you need to stop this. You're bruised. Let's do something about it. So it really is a challenge to think through it all and figure out what to do and figure out what do we let alone, where do we accommodate. Sometimes it just depends on how you're feeling at the particular time. I just saw a young family with a preschooler recently and nobody was sleeping and I said, how about you just don't think about anything else until everybody is getting some sleep. Because you just can't keep going like this. It's too much. There's too much crying. And there was an MD on the team, and I said, and then what are you going to do about this? Because we need your help here. These people, the family's got to be unconscious, for several hours each day, and they aren't. There's no period where everybody's asleep. This just can't go on. So sometimes you just have to dump all this other stuff and take care of yourself. I don't know if we want to spend too much time on this. This is just something I use as an example, and I actually have one of these. I should have brought it. This little keep-on thing was a research study. I can't remember the university it came out of, but they explored it, and they explored all kinds of different things to see which things people with autism looked at the most. Facial-like things, little robots, little pictures, little dolls, and the kids really like this little guy. He moves with music, and he has a real simple face. And I just thought that was an example of a research study. Instead of saying, how can we make you look in our eyes? They said, what kind of little toy do they like to look at? Can we put a face on it so we could practice some stuff? I love that idea.
Patrick's got to keep on.
He's got one, I got one too. They're cute.
Did it result
They suck
in-
all the
did it result
batteries.
Oh, I know, yeah. Yeah,
Did it
that's
result
right.
in human eye contact?
Well, that's what they were trying to, I think. Well, what were the goals? Maybe we should have listened to it. First of all, they were trying to get... They were just trying to engage them in something human-like. So did it transfer to human? I don't know. You can look it up. If you look up Keep On, there's a bunch of studies about it. So is the Autism Spectrum the first group to take a disability and make it a point of pride? Well, how about this? You guys remember this? Anybody around when at Gallaudet, I'm trying to think when this was. Well, there's all kinds of stuff, lots of stuff in deaf
I know
culture.
about this because I
Making
studied this
sign
too.
language be considered a real language instead of just a substitute language.
That was in the
talking about
80s,
unique
right?
structure. But
Or
what
the
this
early
is,
90s?
this was this protest. Okay, in '88, until 1988, Gallaudet had always been run by a hearing president, which you knew at some point people were not going to take that anymore. And so these students said, we're not going to do it. We're going to lay in the road until you get a deaf president because we don't want to be bossed by a hearing president. And they've had it, they got a deaf present, and they've had one, it worked great, and they've had one ever since. So, you know, this kind of thing can happen, and I think in some places it is happening, and this is the example I wanted to show you guys. Do you know about this? I remember when this came out, that in 2005, it was called I don't know if I spelled that right, but the Combating Autism Act came out, and self-advocates were very angry about this. They did not like the name. They liked the resources, but they said, why do you want to be fighting us? Come on, we are autism. And so they made them change it. I guess this is Congress, right? Yeah, they changed it. So CARES is Autism Collaboration, Accountability, Research, Education, and Support Act. It was a good bill. They never had a problem with the bill. It was money. They just had a problem with the language, and they were able to get angry enough to, well, here's the quote, autistic people and a growing number of our families do not see ourselves as something to be combated. Huh. So I said, what if, you know, autism's metamorphosis continues and sort of leads into this neurodiversity. Have you guys heard of the concept of neurodiversity? And has anybody read this book? I am ashamed to say that I have read part of it, but I never made it through just because I have 7 children. That's my excuse. But I know Becky Lyon is the one person that told me about it as soon as it came out. It's a really cool idea, cool book. Silverman is a cool guy. And this is some of the perspective of neurodiversity. Disability is a natural fact of life. We don't have to make all disability go away to have a good society. And in fact, Simon Baron-Cohen would say you'd be losing all kinds of talents if you eliminated all disability. Difference versus deficit depends on the perspective and the context. You know, Ben may look disabled, I don't know, if he's trying to shoot a ball, but if he's running down the court, you know, or on cross-country team, maybe he looks fantastic because his skill set matches that. And neurodiversity is sort of a broadening of what, I try not to use normal, but I hate appropriate, inappropriate. I don't like either one of those terms. But I like acceptable and I like functional, what can be functional. So when somebody says to me this person's displaying inappropriate behavior, I say, is it functional? If it's not, we should change it. But inappropriate, who says whether it's inappropriate or not? Yeah. That's right. Is it dysfunctional in that they can't live with it, or you just don't like it when they interrupt, you know, or jump up? You know, you can jump up and it'll still be okay. That's right. Yeah, neurodiversity is a whole idea about different abilities in society, and it's sort of against medicalizing, this sort of over medicalizing and pathologizing that we've gotten into, and just looking more at supports and just a little more tolerance. So what if we include autistic people in the conversations about autism? So Melanie, when we go to these, you know, state autism meetings, there should be people with autism there. And sometimes there are, but we need to ask for even more of that perspective. So the Adult Autism Subcommittee, in my opinion, should have more adults with autism on it than other people, but unfortunately it's the reverse. What if decisions affecting autistic lives aren't made by only non-autistic people? I mean, really, it should never happen that way, but it does. Yeah.
And they totally leave out
It's,
individuals.
yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. And so you could do a whole other thing on that, even. That if you're only including one end of the spectrum, what about everybody else? How are you going to get their perspective? How are you going to get them representation? It's not easy and quick, so no wonder it doesn't get done. But we probably would need to go observe those people and see what does it seem like is working for them or not, and we don't always do it. This is a C.S. Lewis quote, but I love it. To be cured against one's will, and cured of states which we may not regard as disease, is to be put on the level of those who have not yet reached the age of reason, and those who never will, to be classed with infants, imbeciles, and domestic animals. I like this because none of us, I don't know about you, but I have a lot of weird stuff about myself. Do not want to change it. Other people would wish that I would, but sorry, I'm happy. So, you know, we all have this and want it. But it's like you reach that line where you get classified as pathological by the DSM, and suddenly you lose the ability to be able to say, I don't want to change this, you know. It's hard. Okay, this is my last little piece. I don't know if any of you have seen this movie, but it's great.
I look at neurotypical life, and I'm sorry, I don't really want to be one of you. I'm not particularly impressed that it is a better way of life. It's a different way of life, and I celebrate the difference, the same way I embrace people that are in any way different. But I don't want to be neurotypical. I'm happy being what I am. And I think a person who's going to come out and try and cure me because I make them uncomfortable, I think they need to deal with themselves. Because I'm not uncomfortable.
Look at the water swirling around.
Has anybody seen it? You might like it. And that's it. That's my talk. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Well, tell us about what's all's gonna be coming up in the fall group.
Well, the fall group is this. I'll show
No
you.
driving,
No driving. I wish it was. Boy, that took a lot of energy. I'm still recovering from that driving.
Do you think you'll ever do that again?
Maybe. I'd like to.
Good.
I think it's a big need. This is, the reason I'm doing this particular group is because the person that's the author of this book is a friend of mine, and she came and talked about this book, so I thought, well, I'll try it and use it. It's Parties, Norms, and Social Norms, a crash course in safe living for young adults on the autism spectrum. So each week is a chapter out of the book and a theme. We can probably look and see. And that's going to be our group for the fall. Let's see if we can get the table of contents. So, socializing safely. There's the sex thing, safely, online safety, drinking and drugs, managing stress, living with a roommate, money management. Really, hopefully I will benefit. I still need to gain some of these skills myself. Budgeting. So that's our group.
But not transient, Lisa Meek, without the S.
No, what?
Lisa Meek.
Oh, this person. Oh, yeah. She's not the one I know.
Yeah.
It's the Tracy Lloyd Masterson that I know. But yeah, she does have a co-author. That's right. And the great thing about this book is this book's profits. She was nice enough to come and talk for free at EKU, and I already thought she was nice. But I thought she was making money on the book. So I made some joke about it, because I bought one. And she said, oh, no, it's going to our Autism Society. And I was like, oh, you are so nice. So we bought them, and then people, it'll be included in the little fee for our group. We're going to do that. And in the spring, we'll do something else if the adults want it. Usually I wait and see if they're asking for it. And then we'll do our usual, our parent group and our kiddo. You've done that group before. The parent consultation, and then our kids will do our social group. So we kind of do our cyclical little groups. Although if you guys ever wanted us to do something else, like if you ever had an idea for a theme for one of our adult groups, just tell us. I'm open to anything.
We did the art group.
Yeah, that was kind of fun, wasn't it? We did this pattern art group. We did it to try to capitalize on the kind of systematic thinking that people, so we did all these different patterns, swirly ones, I don't know, repeating squares, and that was kind of fun. We got really into autistic viewpoint on visual things. So I'm up for input. Any other comments or questions, guys? Did this make you think? Will you leave here thinking about this? I hope so.